Have you ever had one of those trading days that just leaves you confused? You sit down at your desk, you feel calm, focused, and totally serious. You're not being emotional, you're not impulsive, and you're definitely not chasing the market. From the outside, everything looks perfectly controlled and disciplined. But internally, something feels tight. You're making decisions, but they feel heavy. You're following your rules to the letter, but there's this underlying pressure, this tension simmering just beneath the surface. You're not angry in the obvious way. There's no shouting, no frustration, no punching the desk. Yet the day just doesn't feel clean. This is exactly where so many traders get lost. We're taught to think of anger as loud and obvious. A raised voice, revenge trading, breaking all our rules in a fit of frustration. But that's only one version of anger. In the world of trading, anger often shows up much more quietly. It shows up as compression. And this compressed anger is one of the most dangerous emotional states a trader can be in, precisely because it feels so controlled. Let's unpack this, because it's a game changer. Quiet anger doesn't announce itself with a bang. It creeps in disguised as other things. It can look like an incredibly tight focus or an intense seriousness. It can manifest as subtle judgment, a deep-seated need to be right about a trade, or a sudden lack of flexibility in your thinking. You see, you're not reacting emotionally in the heat of the moment. Instead, you're holding emotion in. You're suppressing it. And holding on to that emotion creates immense internal pressure. That pressure fundamentally changes how you interpret the information the market is giving you. You might think this intense focus helps you see the market more clearly, but it does the opposite. It makes you see it more narrowly. You start filtering every tick and every price movement through a rigid lens of expectation. You start thinking, this setup should work, or this makes perfect logical sense. Or my personal favorite, I've done everything right, so the market has to reward me. But that isn't neutral, objective observation. That's expectation under extreme tension. Here's why this is so critical to understand. Anger, at its very core, isn't about rage or fury. It's about blocked intent. It's when you want something to happen, and it doesn't. When that happens, your whole system tightens up. When that tightening is expressed outwardly, we all recognize it and call it anger. But when it's held inwardly, we often mislabel it as discipline. But it's not the healthy, flexible kind of discipline. It's a rigid, brittle version. This is the trap traders fall into. They tell themselves, I'm being logical. I'm not emotional. But internally, there's a powerful resistance brewing. A resistance to being wrong. A resistance to waiting patiently. A resistance to accepting the market's inherent uncertainty. That resistance is emotional energy. And emotional energy always leaks into your decision-making. It just leaks out differently when it's suppressed. Instead of making big, impulsive mistakes, you end up with much more subtle, insidious errors. You develop an overconfidence in your reads of the market. You become less willing to exit a trade that's clearly not working. Your reaction times might be just slightly delayed. You become less open to considering alternative scenarios or what the other side of the trade might be thinking. Nothing dramatic on its own. Just enough distortion to make a real difference to your bottom line over time. That's why these kinds of days so often end with the thought, I did everything right. I just don't know why today felt so off. Let's make this really concrete with a scenario. Imagine you take a trade that fits your plan perfectly. Every box is checked, but it doesn't work out immediately. Price just chops around. It pulls back towards your entry. It's not showing any of the follow-through you expected. Now, you're not panicking. You're calm on the surface. But inside, you're thinking, this makes sense. It should go. It has to go. That single thought, it should, carries pressure. It's not urgency. It's a heavy, demanding pressure. At that moment, you are no longer an impartial observer of the market. you are asserting your will onto it. And assertion is completely incompatible with probabilistic thinking. The market doesn't care about your assertions or how right your setup was. It responds to one thing and one thing only: order flow. So as the price continues to behave differently than you expected, that internal tension just keeps building. Still no explosion. Just more and more internal compression. And now, when you finally exit the trade, either for a small loss or at break-even, or when the trade ultimately fails and hits your stop loss, the emotional release doesn't happen right away. It often comes much later, long after the trading session is over. That's when you suddenly feel it. You feel drained, irritable, and mentally exhausted. Not because the day was wild or volatile, but because you spent hours upon hours holding on to emotion instead of processing it and letting it go. This is the hidden cost of quiet anger. It doesn't blow up your account in one spectacular trade. It slowly erodes your clarity, your judgment, and your mental capital over time. So, what's the fix? Well, the fix is not to just be less emotional. That's impossible advice. The real fix is to get much better at recognizing the feeling of pressure as it arises. Pressure has a very distinct internal voice. It sounds like, "This should work." It sounds like, "I did everything right. I deserve this." It sounds like, "I don't want to give back my morning profits." And the most common one, "I just don't want to be wrong here." Listen closely to your internal monologue. Those thoughts are not logical analysis. They are emotional commitments disguised as logic. When you notice them, that is your cue to soften your grip, not tighten it. It's your signal to widen your perspective, not narrow it down. There's one practical reframe that helps with this immensely. Instead of asking yourself, "Does this trade make sense?" try asking this instead: "If this trade fails, am I emotionally okay with that?" Be honest. If the answer is no, or even a hesitant maybe, then you are already trading under pressure. And pressure, even the quiet, subtle kind, distorts judgment. Truly professional traders don't aim for emotional suppression. They don't try to become robots. They aim for emotional circulation. They feel the emotion. They acknowledge its presence without judgment, and then they release it. Feel, acknowledge, release. They don't follow the destructive pattern of feel, hold, compress. That's the entire difference between an amateur mindset and a professional one. When you allow those small frustrations to chop, the failed breakout, the missed entry to pass through you instead of letting them harden into that intense, brittle seriousness, your decision-making stays fluid and flexible. And that flexibility is your real edge in the market. So if you've had days where you felt calm, logical, and in control, yet somehow things still felt off, don't automatically assume you are doing everything right. Look closer. Check for that feeling of pressure. Check for that internal resistance. Check for that quiet anger masquerading as discipline. Because when you can finally trade without needing to be right, without needing the market to validate you, and without holding on to all that tension, that is when your logic can finally work for you, not against you. And that is the trader's hidden edge. If this resonated with you, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. And let me know in the comments, have you ever noticed this quiet pressure during your own trading days? I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.